everyone. Thanks a lot for staying with us. You're watching Plain Speak with me, Shivani Gupta. Amid statements flying thick and fast by opposition that Narendra Modi will change India's constitution drastically if voted back to power, the incumbent Prime Minister responded in a rally in Bihar's Gaya today. Just yesterday, remember, he had said in an interview that he does not take decisions to scare or run over anyone, and that his decisions were only for the wholesome development of the country. Today, he accused the opposition of resorting to fear-mongering to take him on. PM Modi's counter comes after opposition leaders including Rahul Gandhi have repeatedly claimed that the BJP would attempt to change the constitution if voted to power for the third time. The Congress MP has said while holding a roadshow earlier in the day that BJP and RSS want to get rid of the constitution. They want to get rid of the democratic process so that they can crush all other ideas. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has asserted that he feels indebted to Babasaheb Ambedkar's Samvidhan, which enabled him to rise from humble origins. He further stated that this year, 75 years of the Constitution will be celebrated on a scale similar to the Amrit Kal celebrations, which marks 75 years of independence. PM Modi's big statement came after RJD President Lalu Prasad also raked up utterances made by a few leaders of the BJP themselves, who have said that constitution will need to be changed. And the party can do that if it gets two-thirds majority in parliament. Now, what those changes will be is frankly not mentioned by anyone. Not to forget though, constitutional changes are hardly rare in India. The Indian constitution has been changed over 100 times since its adoption. But in election season, when the mentioning of any constitutional change is political rhetoric really, devoid of any meritorious discussion, it is done purely to either attract or scare a section of voters. Turning the constitution into a battlefield. Who is really mocking the Samvidhan by doing so? We take that question to our guests in just a bit. But first up, let me expand on how the Prime Minister took on and countered opposition's big charges against him, particularly of how another term to Narendra Modi will ensure that the constitution will no longer remain the same. So remember, several opposition leaders, particularly the Congress party leaders, have claimed, like Rahul Gandhi for example, that RSS and BJP want to get rid, they want to destroy the Indian constitution. This is the charge that is made ad nauseum, in fact, that the BJP doesn't stand for the Indian constitution at all. Now, Narendra Modi has said today that it is opposition's habit to fear-monger. And is it really going to be paranoia and fear that you spread against Narendra Modi coming back to power that can keep him out of power? Because I remember this happened quite a bit in 2014. But Narendra Modi was an idea whose time had come. Opposition leaders have also somehow suggested that the BJP will end reservations for Dalit and SC/STs if they were to, have that kind of strong majority in parliament. The Prime Minister has reiterated today that nobody can change the constitution. He has obviously backed the constitution that was the vision of leaders like Babasaheb Ambedkar. Opposition leaders like RJD Supremo Lalu Prasad Yadav, for example, has said that any attempt on changing the constitution, particularly if it affects the backwards, will not be tolerated. In fact, he has gone on to say more, best not repeated. But the Prime Minister has said that actually it is and he's referring to Indira Gandhi and the emergency imposed by the Congress Prime Minister. Some have tried to destroy the constitution or have destroyed the constitution during emergency instead. So, the Congress being the last party that should lecture anybody else. Finally, opposition leaders have further alleged that BJP is trying to overturn the constitution to benefit some people alone, in the sense that the constitution will no longer be the body that represents everybody concerned in India. It will become, that one vision that the BJP is accused of, and here the allegation could be that it will be predominantly for Hindus and not much else, and upper caste may be added to that as well. Countering such allegations, the Prime Minister has said that he doesn't take decisions to scare anyone. His agenda is not to scare anyone, or nobody should be scared of his decisions. The decisions are taken, and he does have big plans for his impending third term, but nobody needs to be scared of those decisions. But let's also take a look at how this constitution debate was triggered, because it hasn't come out of thin air. And it's not that the BJP leaders themselves haven't given some sort of a plank to the opposition parties to allege that, see, this is what they have in mind if they were to come to power. So these are some of the remarks by BJP leaders themselves that triggered this entire constitution debate. Sitting BJP MP Lalu Singh has made from Ayodhya has made a controversial comment stating that to amend or to make a new constitution, more than two-thirds majority is needed. Now, his video with this comment went viral a few days ago, and certainly that is not what has helped the BJP. It was not just him, even BJP candidate from Rajasthan's Nagaur made a comment in a similar vein, stating that constitutional amendments were needed to take tough decisions in the nation's interest. Now, as such, there is nothing wrong with this statement. Constitutional amendments have happened quite a bit, and I will get you that in just a bit. But in nation's interest is a term that can be interpreted in any way. Nothing hugely controversial about what she has said, but of course, this is all sparking a debate of whether big changes are in offering. And of course, much before this, former Union Minister Anand Hegde was the one who had said that constitutional amendments were needed to reverse certain unnecessary things brought in by the Congress to destroy Hinduism. He had said BJP already has two-thirds majority in Lok Sabha but not in Rajya Sabha to be able to affect those constitutional changes. 400 plus or 400 par numbers will help the BJP to achieve that goal. And Anand Hegde, remember, has not been fielded by the BJP for the Lok Sabha elections this time around, and many felt it was because of this comment. Because this comment was the one that triggered this entire debate and attracted a lot of ire, certainly did not go down well with the BJP leadership itself. Now, while the opposition's attack here is to particularly suggest that the constitution will be changed in such a manner that India will no longer remain the India as it was envisaged to be, the reality is that amendments to the Indian constitution are fairly common and have been done since right after independence or when it was adopted. Indian constitution has been amended 106 times already and is already very different from the original draft. In fact, there is a view that the Indian constitution is extraordinarily heavy document and is globally the most amended national constitution because of just how detailed it is, and therefore it is not surprising that it routinely needs amendments to stay relevant because times change, requirements change. It is not so much a guiding vision document but a precise legal document. The Constitution of India has 448 articles divided into 25 sections. It contains almost 145,000 words. It makes it the lengthiest written constitution globally. And in comparison, for example, the US Constitution is a relatively concise document comprising a preamble and 7 articles only. It's under 5,000 words. And since 1789, it has been amended only 27 times to make it a remarkably relevant document over time. Regardless, the point is that amending the Indian Constitution should not be looked at as some sort of an unholy activity. In fact, Congress governments have effected some long-lasting amendments that can be seen as altering the vision or the consensus of the Constituent Assembly while drafting the Constitution. So, let me just take you through some of these amendments. The first amendment itself was brought in under Jawaharlal Nehru, and it was brought in right after the document was adopted in 1951. Amongst other changes, it placed certain restrictions to free speech. Now, citizens did not have the right to speak freely if their words imperiled public order. Things like that were added as far as this amendment was concerned. And the amendment also added a 9th schedule to the Constitution listing a number of state laws which cannot be challenged in courts. Former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, of course, is notoriously famous for adding words like secular and socialist in the preamble during the emergency. The 42nd Amendment, which she effected, in fact, is also called a mini constitution just because of the sheer number and expanse of the changes introduced. Under UPA 1, 93rd Amendment inserted a clause 5 in Article 15. This enabled the states to make special provisions for socially and educationally backward classes for admissions to educational institutions. This is the Right to Education Act, which was introduced. But the exception were minority institutions. Many feel, leaving out minority institutions, the RTE Act had the same impact that it did for Hindu educational institutions, like the British era law did for Hindu temples. It basically controlled Hindu institutions, and many of them became financially and economically unviable. These are contentious changes that were made, so it's not like it hasn't happened before. But let's dive into our big debate coming in. Exactly who is mocking the Samvidhan or the Constitution by spreading fear or paranoia around it?
The RSS and the BJP are trying to destroy India's constitution and change India's constitution. The Congress Party and the India Alliance is trying to save the constitution of India.
देश की युवा पीढ़ी को देश की गौरवशाली संविधान के निर्माण की प्रक्रिया, उसके अध्याय, उसका महत्व बताएंगे। संविधान दलित, पिछड़ा, आदिवासी की ताकत बना रहे, इसके लिए हमें एकजुट होकर साथ खड़े रहना है।
Going across to our guests joining us, Shaina NC of the BJP, Mahima Singh of the Congress Party joining us, Javed Ansari, senior journalist, and Desh Ratan Nigam is political lawyer and analyst, leans towards the RSS and the BJP, also with us on the show. Let me begin with Shaina NC. Shaina, like I mentioned, this debate has been triggered by your leaders, and some of them have made these statements suggesting that your new government will change the constitution drastically. And no wonder there is a section of the community plus a section of the opposition that is very nervous about it.
Shivani, let me start by quoting the Honorable Prime Minister, and this is what he said today itself. He says, for the Congress and the India Alliance, the constitution may be a political gimmick, but for us, it is a sacred text of faith and belief. No one can change it. Now, that being the opening comment, I think we should also remember, Shivani, who actually thought of the Constitution Day. When our Honorable Prime Minister suggested that there should be celebrating a Constitution Day, it was then Mallikarjun Kharge that opposed it. Despite that, the Bharatiya Janata Party under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi has talked about the constitution, the preamble, reaching out to every segment, teaching from schools, colleges, etc. so people understand the importance of it. This kind of political gimmickry is a disservice to Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, and for those who are trying to make this a political misconception where they want to spread lies and untrue facts, saying that, you know, if the Bharatiya Janata Party comes, there will be amendment to the constitution. The Prime Minister has shut them all up.
No, but
and
it's
I
your
think
leaders.
It's imperative for you
you're very
in your
right.
video to also highlight what the Honorable Prime Minister said.
I did at the start of the show, and we will continue to do so. We are doing that right now. But my point is that this debate was triggered by your leaders itself. So shouldn't it be the message by the BJP to your own leaders to not spread this paranoia or to not spread this fear? Certainly the party has failed on that.
I don't think, Shivani, there isn't a taller leader than Prime Minister Modi, and he has clearly said that the Congress continues to spread lies vis-a-vis the Constitution. We are the ones who have celebrated everything from the Constitution Day to explaining the importance of the preamble and reached out to public at large to respect what Babasaheb Ambedkar created. And in this unity and this diversity, there is one thing which is holy and divine for us. There is one book which is sacred and should be respected, and that happens to be the Constitution of India.
Okay.
I don't think there can be a bigger statement than this that says it all. As far as narratives are concerned, counter narratives are concerned, every political party that is trying to play a gimmick about the Constitution, have a little bit of soul searching, have a little bit of reread, and understand what the Constitution stands for.
Okay,
let me go. The Samvidhan.
Let me go across to Mahima Singh of the Congress Party. Not only is the fact that as Shaira NC mentioned, Constitution Day celebrations, for examples, the Congress and other opposition parties skipped that Constitution Day event in the Central Hall because, I don't know, you wanted to oppose the central government and you've been opposing many measures of the Modi government. Not to forget that the Congress also has a record that when you've had enough power, you have changed the Constitution. To the extent that the Prime Minister today reminded the Congress party of the emergency era.
जय हिंद। फानूस बन के जिसकी हिफाजत हवा करे, वो शम्मा क्या बुझे जिसे रोशन खुदा करे. This constitution has been written by the forefathers of this country, Shivani. So much need not to be said. You know, all that BJP needed to say today, all that the Prime Minister needed to say today was to extend a word of condemnation against those MPs of the BJP, public representatives of the BJP, be it Jyoti Mirdha, be it Lalu Singh, be it Anant Hegde, who have actually gone out and said that we need, and got recorded on the camera, that we need 400 plus so that we can change the constitution. You see, truth comes out. Truth finds a way to come out. It is like water. Prime Minister Modi is the only Prime Minister who has not conducted a single press conference in 10 years. He is the only Prime Minister who's, today openly, brazenly speaking about one leader, one language, one, food, one nation, one language.
No,
one
he's not
culture,
done that.
everything.
No, let's be fair. He's never talked about one leader, one language, one food.
He has, of course. Modi ki guarantee, हम कौन सा खाना खाएंगे, everything. You see,
no,
everything
he's not
points
done
out to
that. No, I'm sorry, I must
he has,
object.
very much, Shivani.
No, he hasn't
Shivani,
quote
I
one.
understand your compulsion.
No, there is no compulsion. My compulsion is to be honest about this.
Will you allow me to
You've criticized the Prime Minister on my show,
Will you
Mahima.
allow me
One
to
second.
complete my
No, one
thought?
second. You've criticized the Prime Minister on my show multiple times on many issues. But I have to be honest to the fact that the Prime Minister has never said anything about one food for the country. Come on.
You see, when he speaks and we hear, the country hears, we understand. The people of this country, Shivani, are very wise. The wisdom is, it prevails over us when we hear him, when he talks of a certain way of living, a certain way of eating, a certain way of speaking. Modi ki guarantee over everything else. Will you deny that he has not conducted a press conference over 10 years? Do you know a Prime Minister of any other democratic country who has not conducted a press conference over 10 years?
No, I didn't contradict you on that. I contradicted you when you quote someone. You either present the attribution for that quote, or please, at least for the important positions like the Prime Minister of the country, we cannot just say he has said something and it's an interpretation. Now you're saying people are wise enough to understand it. Anyways, my point is, I'm discussing the Constitution. I'm discussing the Constitution. Mahima, how do you respond to the charge that the Congress is the one under whose rules we've had maximum amendments to the Constitution? Why is it that today you're suddenly acting like the Constitution was never amended?
Shivani, you see, when COVID happened, when the country was facing a pandemic, the world was facing a pandemic, there was a lockdown, an unplanned lockdown imposed upon the country after all the Thali gambit. When we were gasping for oxygen, the BJP brought the farm bill through an ordinance through the back door, and later the BJP had to apologize for that. The Prime Minister had to apologize. I am pointing to the ways of imposing the undeclared emergency on this country, while you accuse the Congress that has multiple times apologized for any wrong that has happened towards this country. Our leader, Shri Rahul Gandhi, has in plain words said that, you see, what happened was unfortunate, shouldn't have happened, we apologize. But will Prime Minister Modi apologize before the country for the ordinances? He did actually, in fact, at that point in time, but will he apologize for 700 lives lost of the farmers? Will he apologize for one of his cabinet ministers' son trampling the farmers in Lakhimpur Kheri? Will he apologize for the wrongful demonetization, for which today one of the judges has to say that, maybe it was a way to convert white money into black money? Will he apologize for electoral bonds? They have actually denied any information about this. Said we have not kept any records of our donors.
Okay, so
will
you are
will
objecting
apologize?
to
Will the BJP
certain
spokesperson
laws or
apologize for all of
certain
that?
amendments made, but certainly I hope it's not the Congress party's contention that the constitution cannot be amended, because I think there's a fairly illiterate debate happening on the
Constitution
constitution
must not be
overall.
redone.
The public
Amendments,
should be aware that the
rightful
Indian
amendments is all
constitution
right.
is amended and has been amended over 100 times. No heavens have ever fallen, no heavens will fall. The constitution is a continuous living document.
Rightful
It's an
amendments.
extensive document, and it does invite amendments. Some have been,
Rightful
amendments that have been
Shivani.
contentious, and some have been amendments that have been agreed upon by all. Can I just mention, by the way, by the way, that even the GST amendment was opposed at one time.
Absolutely.
Right? But the GST in itself, so even the Congress party today would not say was not needed. There are always troubles
say-
when you make changes. There are always political issues, and there are always, opposition to certain things. But certain changes have to be made. But I don't want to get into specifics just as that. But Javed Ansari, I want to come to you. Is this dog whistling of some kind as well by opposition leaders? Scaring a certain percentage of the population, if it's not SC, STs and backward classes, then possibly the minorities, to suggest that, if this man comes to power one more time, then we're all done.
Shivani, that's the minority bit is an interpretation, the same way that the speaker before me was interpreting. I, for one, welcome this debate on the Constitution. Without going into the merits of it, at least we are debating Constitution and not dietary habits. At least we are talking of what should and should not be with regards to the Constitution, rather than name calling, as we've seen in elections of the past. I hope I haven't spoken too early, but so far this election is bereft of those contentious and those divisive issues. Now, as far as whether the Constitution can be amended, of course it can be amended. It's been amended. You just gave us a number. It's been amended over 100 times, and it will be, in the years to come, it will be amended even further. But this is not a constitution which is cast in stone. The problem arises when you tinker, or when there is talk of tinkering with the basic structure, with the fundamental nature of the Constitution. That's the time which raises fears. And I don't have to quote, you have very succinctly, very vividly pointed out, given us instances where it's the BJP which has actually given the opposition, given them a chance to hammer away at this point. Jyoti Mirda, Lallu Singh, one can understand, he's from Ayodhya, he doesn't have the benefit of this kind of modern education. But Jyoti Mirda, she comes from a family, political family, she's a trained doctor, she's a medical practitioner, she's aware. For
So
her to
I
be
want to
saying
understand,
that-
since you mentioned Javed Ansari, what is so wrong in what Jyoti Mirda said?
She says she's yes, on the face of it, she says that because some hard decisions in the nation's interest. Now, what will be in the nation's interest has to be going by the past, going by what BJP leaders have said about the Constitution in the past. It raises certain fears. So therefore, people need to be a lot far more conscious, far more responsible when they talk of this.
Okay.
Anant Hegde left nothing for anybody's imagination. He was very clear about what he had in mind. That's what raises.
Yeah,
that's
so
what
let me
lends
take that
itself to-
Anand Hegde statement for example, because he somehow brought in Hinduism into this mix. And I did mention, for example, just recently there's this, the RTE Act that I mentioned. Now, there are obviously majority Hindu institutions, educational institutions, who feel that this act, which came under UPA 1, was extremely terrible for those institutions versus protecting minority institutions, even though overall the right to education in itself is a very noble cause and of course something that everybody would back. There was a sense that the Congress governments have favored a certain section of society. You look at the Waqf Act, for example. How does the Waqf Act come about during Indira Gandhi's times, or get strengthened during Indira Gandhi's time, and no questions were asked? A similar act for any other religious community would never be tolerated. So there are problems that have happened. Now, does that give Anant Hegde, Mr. Negi, the Desh Ratan Nigam, does that give Anant Hegde the license to go ahead and speak for what the BJP will do? Has he not done the damage to the BJP more than anyone else?
Shivani, let me tell you, our constitution is very flexible. It itself provides in Article 368 to amend the constitution. It's an evolving document. As the times change, it continuously evolves itself. That's the beauty of our constitution. And even the Congress did it multiple times, misused it also, but the Supreme Court is there to strike down in terms of, constitutional validity and illegality and being unlawful. So that check and balances system is always there in our constitution. Now, suppose the BJP has said one nation, one election. It has talked about UCC. If wants to implement, there may be consequent amendments in the constitution. That would be required, would be a necessity. Like similarly, when the OBC reservation came, you needed to amend Article 15.
Yes.
Similarly, when 10% EWS quota came, it required an amendment in the constitution under Article 15. Without doing it, the changing the Article 15, if you directly do it, it will be struck down by the constitution as it happened in the
No, even
Maratha
for the women's reservation bill, an amendment was brought in. That's the last amendment made to the constitution.
Yes, obviously. So it's a beautiful document which allows that kind of a flexibility irrespective of the party in power. Therefore, and let me tell you, how does one attack constitution? One attacks constitution when you oppose a bill outside the parliament but not inside the parliament and you walk out. That's parliamentary. That process has been provided in the constitution. Secondly, in the Supreme Court, Supreme Court is a constitutional body. When you do not get a favorable judgment, you point fingers towards the Supreme Court. EVMs, which is the integral part of your electoral process, it's an important part of a democracy. When you win an election, there is no problem with the EVM. When you don't win, then there is a problem with the EVM. You start tearing the ordinances outside. That is attacking the constitution. Then you have armed forces. When the armed forces are dealing with the Chinese, you have secretly meeting. Armed forces is a part of constitution. Please remember that. It is given in 355 onwards. So please understand, the moment it happens, you start calling the army chief Gunda. So this is how you attack constitution and create fear mongering in the minds of people. That is what the Prime Minister was actually talking about.
Yeah, but are BJP leaders, some of the big mouths, motor mouth BJP leaders themselves to blame for this particular constitution row that was triggered by Mr. Anant Hegde? Let's be honest about it.
See, some of the loudmouths are always there in all parties. I think BJP took necessary steps by not giving a ticket to that person. In a democracy, denial of a ticket probably is one of the best mechanism to deal with a situation. And therefore, there's a number of issues, when the Chinese were taking over Tibet, providing rice to the Chinese army is attacking the constitution.
Okay, fair enough. You're saying that actually
when Jammu and Kashmir,
mocking of constitution happens in various other ways. Yes.
Jammu Kashmir, when Indian forces were winning, you made it a disputed territory when you went to United Nations. So this is how you have been.
Can I just also mention UCC, for example, is a directive principle in the Constitution.
Yes,
cow protection is a principle in the Constitution. Yes. So we cannot be selective about picking the Constitution either, and what vision it laid down for the country.
10 seconds more.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what BJP probably wants, and I think Shaina can elaborate on that. We want equal rights so far as temple controls are concerned, or teaching in scriptures in government-aided or grant schools.
Okay.
So that equal rights are there on both the sides. If
there isn't a level playing field on all things, and I think that is some criticism the Congress will have to take on that, because a lot of these changes happened under their governments. I have 1 minute left. I'll give 30 seconds each to Shaina and Mahima. Yes, Shaina and C. 30 seconds, please.
So I want to say, people who are mocking the Samvidhan globally, the amendments which have happened over 100 times are within the provision. So to say the constitution can be amended is completely different to saying that somebody is going to change the constitution.
Yeah, the basic structure of the constitution. But maybe the government, maybe the BJP leaders should clarify what they're talking about.
The Prime Minister has highlighted
the problem happens when the BJP leaders themselves refer to things and don't clarify.
How committed we are to this sacred book and how this is not just about celebrating a Constitution Day, but even if you take Nari Shakti Vandan, all this has happened through constitutional amendments,
Okay,
right?
fair
So
enough.
if
China
the
and see,
Congress is
unfortunately,
going
I
to
don't think you can hear me.
completely
Let's
dismiss
just
and
lower her
spread
audio. I have 30
rumours,
seconds to give
I
to
think
Mahima
it's
Singh.
fact.
Mahima Singh, final 30 seconds.
You see, when the Prime Minister said that no need to be scared, Shivani, he spoke like a true tyrant. You know, the true intentions speak, because that is the intention with which he bypasses even the Supreme Court every time. So the BJP spokesperson just spoke about the women reservation bill, which was a doing of the Congress party originally, and it is actually indefinite when the BJP is going to do that.
King, ma'am.
While the Congress party, whenever we have made amendments, the other parties have had their say. The BJP has ousted the members of parliament, has muted mics, has denied the other members of parliament of the opposition their opportunity to speak on the floor of the house.
All
And
right.
then they say, when their MPs, 3 of their MPs have said that they want to change the constitution, no word of condemnation from the Prime Minister, yet they say that their intentions are clean. We doubt, the country doubts.
Okay, I have to leave it at that. I do thank our guests for joining us.